US President Donald Trump's recent executive order, which will now see foreign aid to various countries, including South Africa, being halted for 90 days, is already having a negative impact on certain sectors, particularly healthcare. Now, the sudden halt of funding has already resulted in the suspension of a number of critical health support services across the Western Cape, particularly related to the dispensation then of vital HIV/AIDS treatments. Latasha Naidoo brings us more then on this story. Just a little bit earlier, Latasha, we was, of course, speaking just around who and what exactly would be impacted, because this impact is still going to be quite large, and we're only going to see it in full as the 90 days progresses.
Yes, Arabella, I think we first need to take a look at the reasonings behind this directive. US President Donald Trump signing that executive order on the 20th of January, stating that there needed to be a review of programmatic efficiencies when it came to the dispensation of US aid, and to review how it aligned with the president's policies of US foreign aid. And we know that South Africa, as a major beneficiary of funding from US-led grants and programs, particularly PEPFAR, has been affected in a number of sectors, particularly healthcare, but it does not just apply to HIV and AIDS-related programs. There's also a focus on LGBTQI plus the sectors as well, and programs which have been affected quite greatly, not in terms of shutting down just yet following that directive of a halting of funding for 90 days, but there has been some impact. And here to tell me more is Liberty Matthyse, who is the executive director of Gender Dynamix, which is a human rights and advocacy organization focused on transgender rights. Liberty, thank you for speaking to us. Your organization, Gender Dynamix, has been affected by this funding cut or halt as a result of US aid. Could you speak to the consequences of this?
Definitely. So, of course, this particular freeze of funding has wide and far-ranging consequences, not just for the LGBTQI plus community, but more broadly speaking, in the fight against HIV and, of course, the fight for health and human rights. And so, in that sense, Gender Dynamix is also very much implicated, because a lot of the funding that typically would be channeled towards HIV clinics that offer services to trans and gender diverse communities within South Africa has been frozen. And of course, our community members are looking to organizations like Gender Dynamix to then show up in this moment in being able to hold community concerns and be able to advocate for continuation of care and services. At this particular point in time, we know of about 4 clinics that specifically focuses on transgender women and gender diverse persons more broadly in South Africa that has been impacted hard to the extent that they had to halt their operations. Fortunately, Gender Dynamix was not hit as hard, even though we are recipient of US foreign aid. We have not been hit hard because of the diversification of our own income and resources. And to that extent, we can continue doing this particular work.
Thank you, Liberty. Liberty Matthyse, putting into perspective for our viewers, Arabella, about the consequences of this executive directive by US President Donald Trump in terms of that halting of US funding, whether the aid is in relation to PEPFAR and HIV/AIDS related programs, or to organizations where they focus on the LGBTQI community. And this is, of course, a developing story, the directive for 90 days. So it's essentially a waiting game for these organizations to see whether the US will continue in its support of organizations with regard to funding, or whether that executive order will result in a shutdown of all services permanently, Arabella.